Feel like you're being pulled in 1,000 directions? Let's fix that. Download your free rebalancing toolkit and learn how to design an optimized week that lets you feel like you have it all. Get the goods at brilliantbalance.net/have-it-all.
I'm Cherylanne Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. This is episode 98 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. And today we're talking about who's in charge of how you feel. So hello, my friends. As you listen to this, my mom will be celebrating her birthday today on the day this podcast goes live. So first, before I get into anything about today's episode, happy birthday to you, Mom. We tell my mom all the time that we couldn't do it without her, and we mean it. So it's really fun to have a day to celebrate her and all the things that she brings to our family. She and my dad moved out to be in the same city as our family about 14 years ago. And I, at this point, cannot imagine having it any other way. I had lived apart from my parents since really I left for college. And so that was about, like a 10-year, 12-year span before we got back into the same city. And it's been such a blessing to have them close by and really integrated into our lives. So it brings up all the feelings when I talk about my mom. And I guess it's somehow fitting that we're talking about feelings today. I've actually been doing quite a lot of thinking about feelings lately, and that may sound a little weird. We don't always say we're thinking about our feelings. But if you know anything about the Myers-Briggs type indicator, sometimes they call it MBTI, which is a personality assessment, one of the spectrums that tool assesses people on is thinking at one end and feeling at the other. And I am a pretty strong T, or thinking type, which means most of my decision-making is governed by my head and not necessarily by my heart. So for me to truly empathize with people driven by feelings, which is a lot of our clients, a lot of the people in my life actually, I have to really dig in and pause to see things through that lens. So anyhow, I've had several reasons to do this lately, and it prompted this episode. So what I want to do today is I want to get you to stop and think about this question, who's really in charge of how you feel? And I think, the bottom line is for most of us, our first blush answer to this, like our pat answer is, well, lots of people, my husband, my kids, my boss, my sister, they can all make me feel really good, or they can make me feel really bad. And the question I want us to grapple with today is that really true? We say things like, well, he made me so angry, or she makes me feel so insecure. But in between whatever he or she did, there's this short chain reaction before our feelings about it really kick in. And that space, that chain reaction space, is where we can reclaim a sense of control over how we feel. And so today I want to outline a 3-part framework, really, so we can look at some nuance around feelings and see if we can find that space where we do have control, at least more control than you may feel like you have today. Okay? So the big framework is going to break out into these 3 parts. And this is candidly, this is a little bit meta, right? Like we don't really spend a ton of time normally processing feelings at this level. So if this starts to sound a little ethereal or it feels like you're in unfamiliar territory, let it be that, right? That's okay. I think for some of you, especially if you've never really thought about this, there could be a really big breakthrough waiting for you here. Okay, so the 3 parts of this framework that I want to talk about are 1, emotions, 2, feelings, and then 3, actions. Okay, emotions, feelings, and actions. So first, let's talk about emotions. And technically speaking, emotions are unconscious, biological, and automatic. Okay, they are a nervous system response. They are hardwired into our biology. And most of our emotions actually originate in the most primitive part of our brain. Okay, they are actually in the definition we're going to use today, emotions are really quite immediate. This is different than a mood. A mood can last a long time. You can be in a good mood or a bad mood. You can be kind of melancholy, right? That's not an emotion per se in the parlance I want to use today. So emotions are really the body's alarm system, right? They're designed to keep us alive. And so emotions require management, right? We have to learn how to disconnect a bit from the automatic response to the emotion so that we can manage it. So let's look at what the emotions are. There are, from a little bit of research I did on this, there are exactly 10 true emotions. Here's what they are. And think about these through the lens of something that happens before you even know it happened, right? There's an event, some kind of thing happens in your life, and you quickly experience this emotion. Joy, excitement. The third one is surprise, right? You have no control over being surprised. Sadness, anger, disgust. It's not my favorite. It makes me think about things like larvae, contempt, fear, shame, and guilt. I'm going to go back through those 10. So these are things, again, look through the lens of, do I experience these in my body? Do I have a physiological response that I can point to? Joy, excitement, surprise, those are all kind of positive. Sadness, anger, disgust, contempt, fear, shame, and guilt. Okay? That's the collection of emotions that our bodies know how to experience. So what happens is when we experience the physiological response, the body-based response that we have labeled as joy or excitement or surprise, we then quickly scan our environment to look for meaning. And meaning is when that emotion becomes a feeling. Okay, it's the story we tell ourselves about why we're having that response. So you feel fear, how in your body? Maybe it's a heat that rises up through the center of your body, and there's a sense of like you flush with energy, right? If you're truly afraid. And you quickly scan and you think, oh, there was a loud noise. I'm afraid because there was a loud noise, and that loud noise signifies some kind of danger. Or you look down and there's a moving snake on the ground. That would put me into a fear response, right? Quickly, I might add. So when we experience that physiological emotion, we quickly, almost unconsciously, look to assign meaning. And as soon as we can connect the dots between I'm feeling this in my body and here's why, right? The here's why part, that is when we have crossed over into feelings. With me? Okay. So feelings, unlike emotions, these are conscious, right? They're thought-based. They actually come from a different part of our brain than our emotions, okay? Our emotions are in our limbic system, right? The most primitive part of our brain. The feelings come from the frontal lobe of our brain. That's where abstract thinking comes from. And once we understand, even if we're wrong, by the way, right? Once we have assigned a story to what has happened and why we are feeling one way or another, then we move into action, okay? And this crossover point is the first one I want you to really gain consciousness of, is there is a gap, a small gap, often passes by unnoticed, between the physiological experience of an emotion and the conscious experience of a feeling. So we start to label it, name it, and give it causality at the point that we cross over into feelings. So in order to have a feeling at all, we have to think about what has happened. We have to place a value on that emotion. And we have to really reflect on, what happened and how we think about it. And we construct, and again, I want to emphasize, sometimes very quickly, almost instantaneously, and often unconsciously, we construct a story about what has happened. And then we kind of start to elaborate on it in our minds. So this is where, for any of you who are familiar with Brené Brown's work, she uses this amazing phrase in conflict resolution, and it's the story I'm telling myself is ... right? So I'm feeling this way. I'm feeling let down, right? I'm feeling let down, and the story I'm telling myself is that here are the circumstances around what's happened in my life that are causing me to feel let down, or I'm feeling nervous, and the story I'm telling myself is these are all the things that could happen, and that's why I'm justified in feeling nervous. But here's the crazy and really important thing. Very often, the story we tell ourselves is wrong. The story that we are telling ourselves that is creating the feeling we're having is inaccurate. Right? Our brains are just so wired to create a story that it will take any story at all. Any story will do. And often we're kind of disaster planning, right? We go to worst case scenarios when we make up these stories. So this is why, two people can have the same experience, and one of them doesn't really flinch. It's not that big of a deal. And another one is totally undone by it because the story that we assign to that experience is completely different. Okay, ladies, who's ready for 2 days of big ideas and fun experiences with a group of extraordinary women? We've put together a high-energy venue and a girlfriend getaway vibe just for you. If that sounds like your idea of a good time, then please join me at our next Brilliant Balance Live. It's in Cincinnati on September 26th and 27th, 2019. And tickets are on sale now at CherylanneSkolnicki.com/live. Come learn how to chase your biggest professional dreams, raise a thriving family, and still fiercely protect breathing room just for yourself. I'm going to help you find a new rhythm for getting things done, one that keeps you focused, energized, and fully engaged. Your life, it's about to get a major upgrade. Get your tickets today. The link is in the show notes. So when we talked about emotions, we said emotions need to be managed, right? We want to disconnect a bit from that physiological response and step back so we can actually assess it. Feelings need to be assessed and sometimes redirected. Okay, and you can do this, which puts you in charge of how you feel. So anytime you have that, you feel a response come on, right? Something in your body shifts. We all, if we're really thoughtful about this, can name what those 10 emotions feel like in our body. Anger feels different than fear. Fear feels different than excitement. Right? That one may be more obvious, although they're kind of closely related, if I'm honest. Surprise feels different than contempt. So we can tease out these body-based differences in those emotions. And when we have that emotion and we go, oh, I think I must be afraid because this is what fear feels like, we want to translate that back into the story that we're telling ourselves and see if we can redirect. When you do this, when you can get control over the narrative, the story you're telling yourself about that emotion, you enter an entirely new level of control over how you feel day to day. And ultimately, something we are all striving for is a stronger sense of emotional control, right? We want to be more centered. We want to be more stable. We want to be less affected by the circumstances around us so that we can be in charge of how we're going to feel that day. All right? So those are the first two parts of the model, the emotions and then the feelings. The third piece of this is actions. So feelings, once we've assigned a story to that emotion, then we take action that is in alignment with our feeling. Okay, the actions we take, if we're not conscious about them, will reinforce the feeling we already have. So if it's a yucky feeling and we don't want to feel that way, this is our place where we really can start to make a shift. Because the action we take can either amplify that feeling or it can start to dissipate it. All right, let me give you an example. Something really innocuous, like you ask your husband to remember to take out the garbage and he forgets. And you are driving out the next morning and you see everyone else's garbage is out and the lids are open, which means the garbage truck has already come and your garbage cans are not at the end of the street. First, you have an emotion, and your emotion is probably anger, right? And you start to tell yourself the story of, well, he didn't do what I asked him to do, and I'm betrayed by this. I can't trust him. And I'm overwhelmed by this because now we're going to have all this garbage and it's going to be in our garage and it's going to smell bad and no one's going to want to be in our garage. And where are we going to do next week when it overfills? So this whole catastrophizing starts, right? Underneath it is this emotion that we can't trust him. Even more is going to fall to us and we are completely overwhelmed. So we pull the car back to the house and we walk inside and we yell at him about how could he possibly forget to take out the garbage and doesn't he know and blah, 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 blah. And he looks at us and says, I did take the garbage out and I've already brought the cans back in. Do you see how our response had absolutely nothing to do with what really happened, right? We responded, we had this emotional response. We told ourselves a story, which is the only reason those cans are not at the end of the driveway is because he forgot. Our brain didn't even think of the possibility that he could have already taken the garbage out and brought it back in, right? And safely tucked those cans in the garage. So we've had this big response, big action. We've yelled at him, right? Now we're late for work, and it wasn't even the real story. That's an example that shows you that there is space between the emotion that you experience, which was anger, the feeling you have about it, which is this betrayal and overwhelm, like nothing different actually happened. You just saw that there were no garbage cans at the end of your driveway. And it has now exploded into this action that you took where you're yelling at him, right? Because you're yelling at a level that matches your feelings about the situation. They don't necessarily even match the action or the emotion. They match your feelings that you've assigned, the value that you've assigned to the situation, okay? Now, in this example, this can all quickly dissipate because he has the chance to tell you, I actually already brought them back in. And you guys both kind of maybe laugh about it, hopefully, and move on, okay? But what if you never have the opportunity to have that conversation? What if it's an example where you've assigned meaning to something that you've observed that happened in your life, right? Happened in the environment. And you never told the person what was involved. And there was never a dialogue where it could be clarified. How long can we walk around carrying feelings and taking actions that match what we think happened, right? And we say, oh, it's his fault, right? It's my boss's fault. It's my mom's fault. It's my colleague's fault. But we haven't actually gotten to the other side of that story to test, is it true? Is my feeling warranted? Could I have a different feeling about the same situation? Like, is there another way? And importantly, is there a way for me to take a different action? So any place in this continuum, in this case, the action we took was yelling at our husband. Think about what happens when something goes down at the end of the day at work and you're angry about something your boss said or did or didn't say or didn't do, and you feel attacked. And when you feel attacked, the word feeling, you feel weak, right? Someone is in a position of power and you are weak and you've been attacked. So you pull the car in and you come in the door and you think, all right, I'm just going to make dinner. And then one of your children comes by and they do something that you don't like. And you yell at them and you yell at them loudly and aggressively. And if you catch yourself in that moment, you realize you are not actually yelling at your child, you are yelling at your boss through your child, right? The anger over what happened at work has come with you as a feeling of being attacked and being weak. And now you're taking an action to make yourself feel strong, which is yelling at a child who had nothing to do with the situation. We've all been there, right? We've all been in circumstances where we are displacing that feeling, and we are looking to fix that feeling with an action that's actually inappropriate. This is also how we end up in situations. It's this runaway freight train, right? Emotion leads right into feeling, leads right into action. And before we know it, we're headfirst in the carton of ice cream, or we've had that third glass of wine, or we're, binge shopping for home decor on the Wayfair site. Like something that is an unconscious numbing action can be at the end of this chain if we don't take time to check in and process how we're feeling. So what do you do about it? What do you do about this? If this framework is like landing for you and you're starting to think, okay, is there actually space that I can create so that I can feel more in control more often? The best step you can take is to create space between the pieces of this chain. So between the body-based emotion that you experience and the feeling you assign to it, can you create space? Or between the feeling you're having, right, with the story you're starting to tell yourself and the action that you take, can you create space? Either one of those places is an opportunity for you to feel more control, right? For you to reclaim a sense of intentionality over how you behave. So you could do something like journal it out. You know you're not feeling good. You haven't quite connected the dots. You can grab a journal and try to piece that together. You could have a conversation with someone to process how you're feeling. This happened, and I'm noticing that this is the story I'm telling myself, and this is how I'm feeling about it. And you can process that out loud, particularly if you're extroverted. You could do something just to kind of reset your physiology. You could work out. You could go for a long walk, or you could go for a really hard run, or, do something that changes your physiology. You could take a shower just to kind of hit the reset button and get a new perspective on the situation. Any of those tactics, I would advocate especially for journaling to process, or a conversation, right? With a friend, with your spouse, with a therapist, with a coach, anybody who is in your life who's there to help you process this chain can help you be more in control over how you feel more often. Because really and truly, the only person who's in charge of how you feel is you. And I am fully aware that it doesn't always feel that way. I'm fully aware that it feels like someone else is in charge of how we feel, and their behavior is causing us to feel a certain way. And the only path through that is to create space between the emotion and the feeling, or between the feeling and the action. So you have a chance to reframe, right, and get yourself on a path that you feel really good about. Great freedom comes from that. Freedom comes through changing the story that we tell ourselves about the emotions we're experiencing, and especially in exerting control over our actions. So try it. I want you to give this a try as you go out into your life this week, and pay attention to where you're experiencing this collision between emotions, feelings, and actions. Expect it to be messy. Expect it to be imperfect. This is brand new to you. Okay, all new things, new mental models take time to form. In fact, that's what we're going to talk about in next week's episode, is how long it sometimes takes for us to get results when we're trying something new. So it's going to be a really good conversation about what I'm calling the results lag. But for this week, give yourself permission to try this and see if you can shift how you're feeling using this model. Okay. Until then, until next time, come find me in our Brilliant Balance Facebook group. We have an amazing group. If you go to Facebook and search the words Brilliant Balance, you'll find us. That is where we do the video trainings. It's where we have a community assembled of women just like you who are trying to learn a new way of managing all the things coming at us in our very crowded lives. And it's a great place to be to get support as you make these changes. Also, I would love it if you liked today's episode, if you shared it with a friend. Easiest thing to do is just text her the link and ask her to listen, and hopefully she'll get something out of it as well. That's all for today, my friends. Until next time, let's be brilliant. Okay, ladies, who's ready for 2 days of big ideas and fun experiences with a group of extraordinary women? We've put together a high-energy venue and a girlfriend getaway vibe just for you. If that sounds like your idea of a good time, then please join me at our next Brilliant Balance Live. It's in Cincinnati on September 26th and 27th, 2019, and tickets are on sale now at CherylanneSkolnicki.com/live. Come learn how to chase your biggest professional dreams, raise a thriving family, and still fiercely protect breathing room just for yourself. I'm going to help you find a new rhythm for getting things done, one that keeps you focused, energized, and fully engaged. Your life, it's about to get a major upgrade. Get your tickets today. The link is in the show notes.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.